Greetings, this is Bradford Townsend, and this is a forward research report on the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR Watchman, brought to you by the thrice knighted Grand Master Knight Bradford Donald Keller Townsend. And let's see what's going on with the Council on Foreign Relations here. There is a no-deal Brexit still avoidable, why the Irish border remains a stumbling block for negotiations. That's a simple one. Big business, big money, didn't like the result of the vote because for some of their business interests it'll just be less profitable, or they're going to have to make investments and spend money and time and energy adjusting to a new relationship with the United Kingdom, with the European Union, and the multinational corporations. So there's big players that are powerful, that can infuse money into political campaigns, encourage people to run and fund them, that can buy advertising, that can have television and movie studios change their scripts to put out the message that they want, on longer term projects. Is major realignment taking place in the Middle East? No, not really. Turkey, after years of being the scorned woman of Europe, the Europeans, in spite of everything that they may proclaim as being liberals or progressives, when it comes down to it, they really don't want the largest populous country in the European Union to be a Muslim country. And with the demographics of Turkey, having passed up Germany, which at this time is the most popular member of the European Union states, you'd have the largest country in the European Union, which then would be able to, through the democratic process, you'd have a large conservative Muslim contingent. And then if you bring in Albania and the Bosnians and plus the Muslims in London, there's a very large mosque in London, the size of any Christian church. So Berlin also has a large Muslim population and Turkish connection. So if Turkey was fully integrated, they'd have these huge populations in big cities like London, Paris, Berlin especially, and they could be whatever the one of the large few parties of Turkey could then have satellite parties in Germany and have a substantial base of people there, and it would just be a major change culturally as well, and a major change in the power balance. So Turkey has always been willing to pivot and look around and pursue their own interests. And that might be working with Russia or Iran on certain things. And Brexit and broken promises. It was going to be difficult. I really always thought the European Union is going to devolve and fall apart, just like the United States, Canada, Mexico. We're heading in the countries of Central Africa, of South America, of Asia. They always talk about and focus on how China has had this big boom period where millions of tons of concrete have been poured and millions of tons of steel have been used and built all these cities and railways and highways and harbors, and there has been a huge amount of activity, almost unprecedented in scale and in the how fast they're able to construct all these harbors, buildings, schools, and more power to them in a way, to the Chinese, for having the energy and the organizational skills to get all this done. On the other side, um, it was actually a horrible way to develop, and it was slow suicide, like being an alcoholic and you're drinking a full liter of high alcohol booze a day, whether it's vodka or rice wine or whatever, where you can get like 40% of the liter is actual ethyl alcohol that you're consuming. Um, that is you're just going to destroy your health because your body can't process that much alcohol, and then you want that euphoric effect of that first few times you got intoxicated, or you just go into shivers and have all kinds of bad reactions if of detoxing off of having so much alcohol always in your system. So that's they really made horrifically bad choices, China. That's going to be the biggest disaster probably in all of human history, and because they went and moved people into cities away from the country where they can grow food. And as the fossil fuels and the minerals and everything are depleted, we might use over 1,700,000,000 tons of steel this year globally, and a good chunk of that goes to China, and that's unsustainable. And the buildings are made in a way as not to last, with planned obsolescence. The steel itself gives up electrons in what's called oxidation process, and as it's stripped of its electrons, it decays and loses its crystalline structure, integrity, and its tensile strength and its twisting strength, and it sublimates, which means the out of the different crystalline structure of the alloy, it flings off entire atoms and different kind of particles off of it. So steel, if you just take a chunk of steel like a rebar that would be used in a bridge or building a building or a mine shaft, and then take that I-beam and just set it in your backyard on a couple of large rocks or something, let's say it's 3 meters long, and then you're a young person and you're having your first child, and you just kind of leave it out there as like an artifact in your backyard and wait until your son or daughter gets married and see what that beam, and you don't paint it or do anything to it, just leave it out there, see how much it's going to change over those 20, maybe average of 25 years for when they get married. And in 25 years of being exposed to the wind, the rain, the elements, that beam, the nice shiny new beam, isn't going to look that way in 25 years, being out there getting rained on and snowed on and blown on and pooped on by birds and everything else. So um, this, what I was trying to get that there in the CFR is really triple faced, like a triune face God. They tell one thing to the members who are actually in, they're real true members of the CFR, in the boardroom meetings or over their Skyping type conference calls. And then they have kind of a medium for more powerful people to be disseminated. Maybe you're an assistant director at a government agency like the Energy Information Administration, and you're invited to belong to the CFR. That person is getting fed one thing, but they don't really know what the real strategy is. And then there's this level that we're looking at now, which is a lot of times 180 degrees or the opposite of what they're really thinking in private, and they're disseminating this um, psychological warfare operation, um, being digital lobbyists, putting this out, digital agents, whether they do, printing it up digitally on paper stock, glossy paper stock, or doing it, on a nice website like this. This isn't what they're really thinking. It might be the actual exact opposite. And I've heard people say the term 3D chess or whatever. It's just complicated, and at the elite levels, most of the people at the elite levels have high IQs and are intelligent people. Every country can muster a significant number, at least in the tens, 50, 100, 200 really high IQ people. I'm saying, let's say over 130, and they have good memories that can learn multiple languages and that type of thing, do advanced math, and that have gotten the best education that country can give them, because they know they're going to need some, for their survival. They're going to need some people that have been indoctrinated all their life and are loyal to their nation, their tribe, their ideology, and they've prepped these people, and even from pre-birth, from trying to arrange the marriages to have the conceptions to create this child, and then spent decades educating them the very best they can and pushing and coaching them and mentoring them to get them to where they are at middle age, being in that critical assistant director position where you're the one doing the actual work and making the actual decisions and making things actually go, because the work isn't done in physics if there's no motion. So things have to, you have to set goals, and the goals have to be completed and met. You set realistic goals and then achieve those goals. If you steadily keep doing that, then you're moving and you have momentum. So there's a little bit here on China, Korea. Those are just I don't know what the word is. Just puppet silliness. I mean, North Korea can't do anything, and even if they have a few nuclear weapons are pretty much outdated now. Cyber warfare, for a fraction, I mean literally a fraction, for maybe less than 5% of the cost of a nuclear arsenal, you can have a whoop-ass cyber attack capability around the world. You could have safe houses in other countries and then put servers in there. And with that, with the millions, billions of dollars, you can get software experts and fully trained Ph.D. computer engineers that know how to get into the back door using machine language and all that kind of stuff. So, and that's way cheaper and can do just as much or more damage than a nuclear weapon can do, and or multiple nuclear weapons detonating. And you can do the same with chemical on a budget of in the hundreds of millions. You could have a large chemical arsenal that's ferocious and be a huge burden if you're attacked by chemical weapons. Unless you're in like the Goldilocks climate area where it's not too cold, not too hot. If it's too cold or too hot, the chemical weapons make your life totally miserable as a warfighter, and even if and can really grind your operations to a halt if they successfully detonated, nerve agent. And then they've got even more wicked stuff out there that's probably classified. So, and that's much less expensive than having a nuclear arsenal. So you're really, if nuclear weapons are maybe only your third or fourth, fifth most powerful weapon to use, if you were going to go to full-on war and were willing to go that far to use things like nuclear weapons and nerve gas, or bubonic plague or something, weaponized bubonic plague type thing. If you're at that level that you're using bubonic plagues and nukes and nerve gas, on an industrial scale, on another civilization, things are pretty far damn gone, and nuclear weapons just ain't there. So all this hype about, because Iran has nuclear weapons, North Korea has nuclear weapons, a lot of it probably just has to do with our monetary system. Our monetary system isn't backed by gold and silver coins like it says in the Constitution it's supposed to be. It's backed by lead, bullets, and bombs, TNT powered 500 or it'd be around 200 kilogram bombs that can be dropped, at a high velocity. If they hit it, let's say twice the speed, of a bullet into a structure, and it has hundreds of pounds of shaped explosive, that's meant to drill into the structure, with all that kinetic energy from having something that heavy traveling at that speed. That's a lot of energy to be released. Plus, has explosives in it, and maybe some kind of material or shrapnel of a very hard metal that can go through other metals or windows and things like that, and drywall. Um, it's really bad. So the nuclear, or they use chemical or whatever, and they're like, oh, so and so use nuclear. So I mean, you kill somebody, you kill somebody. And incendiary bombs like we dropped during the Second World War in Vietnam, which was gelatin bombs made out of gelatinized gasoline, petroleum product. That those napalm was the slang for them, the jargon. The napalm type bombs, the incendiary phosphorus bombs, are just super nasty, and a lot of that type. And they have adiabatic bombs, which are very powerful. They've learned through chemistry, non-nuclear, to make very powerful conventional airburst, especially type bombs that can rain down over if people are not undercover. They can hurt them tremendously. So a lot of this stuff, it's just vacuous. In magic, I'm a magician, and and I started at a young age. I come from generations and generations of magicians, and if you're going to perform magic, and I'm talking an illusion, not an actual summoning of a demon or something kind of magic or a love potion, but I'm performing um, hand tricks like with a coin or with cards, or I'm levitating something. Um, a lot of performing a good magic trick, and I've done magic on stage in front of large audiences, is you distract the audience from where the real technique is happening. And sometimes with people with sleight of hand, for example, who have years, decades of practice at it, they're so fast that even if you kind of tell them how the trick is done, the people become so proficient, the man or woman, at performing the magic with their sleight of hand that you can't even see it. And they know how to hold it and shelter the action of the sleight of hand. So that's kind of what they're doing. Just like we'd have a gorgeous woman in a real skimpy outfit, walking around the stage on high heels and turning her backside and bending over to pick things up and kind of shaking it a little bit. Well, a lot of the guys are looking to the shaking buttocks of the beautiful young woman in her early 20s, and then you've got maybe a male, a very handsome young man, other assistant over here doing something else, trying to get the attention of all the ladies. And maybe he's wearing a vest with no shirt, and he's got muscular arms and everything, and that women find attractive. And he's all clean cut looking, whatever's popular at the time. Maybe now a beard is considered attractive. But he's a young, fit young man, but they're just assistants moving around props or whatever, but they can distract you from the illusion being done. And that's a lot of what this is. It's magic. You're moving around, um, getting people to look around at things that are of no importance. Um, Spain digs up the past. They did get kind of a pass. They were one of the original fascist countries. There was a war there in Spain prior to World War II breaking out, a terrible civil war for the Spanish. And what I guess today is classified as having a Spanish government that was allowed to stay in place for, I think, at least 20 years after the end of the Second World War. So they were there before the war, during the war, after the war. So they had, like, I don't know, a good 3 decades of fascist or more rule in Spain. So now they decided to roll that out. Spain might not be quite behaving the way they want to after many years of having a struggling economy. Um, they went from boom to bust and then have never recovered. And they're going to throw the fascism racist card at the Spanish now, try to keep them in line with their goals, or maybe just kick them in the foot to get up and get back to work, kind of thing. Not sure, what their end game is with basically using dirty name calling and ad hominem attacks on the Spanish people from Foreign Affairs in New York. And then they had this hullabaloo about Macron and Trump and Merkel all not getting along and everything. And again, there's the collapsing Arab world and the collapsing Venezuela. So they can't have it both ways and be agreeing with the Club of Rome's projections, Ugo Bardi and Jurgen Ronders and Dennis Meadows and all those folks that say that we're heading toward a collapse. There's a younger Pablo Cervignon and Raphael Stevens there in France, and there's Arthur Keller, another engineer in France. That are all talking about the collapse of industrial civilization and that France needs to prepare. And these aren't just little guys in France. They hold senior management, executive, or have in the French government and French corporations. And in France and in Sweden and many places, they're saying, hey, this is it. We're heading to that post-industrial civilization. And the Foreign Affairs is still putting out the big lies of democracy and infinite growth on a finite planet and nuclear weapons, and it just but that's not what they really think behind the scenes in their meetings. These are just tactics to put out information and get into people's heads. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.